Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Franchise Tag Podcast with me, your host, Freddie Hall. I hope you're doing all okay. What a wild weekend of NFL we had. Andrew is back with me once again, and another familiar face to this podcast, George Edgerton, the man, the myth, the legend that is George, who is, the Colts. When they're not in the discussion for the Super Bowl, it was a bit of a tight end to the season. Didn't quite get in there. Was it heartbreak on the last day for you, my man?
Look, I'm still not over it. Heartbreak isn't the word. Disgust isn't the word. Unforgivable almost isn't even the word. I just don't know. We flamed out against Raiders and just didn't show up against Jaguars, and we got what we deserved. So, yeah, a tough way to after when you got someone like Jonathan Taylor, it's hard to accept that you lose to the Jags. But history repeats itself. We hadn't won there for so many years, so
There was a lot of us we've got in outside the podcast who've talked about this podcast a lot. He's a big Jacksonville Jags fan, and he's not been confident at all every game, all year.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last game he was like, "Oh no, we're definitely going to win that game. We're going to win that game. We're going to beat the Colts, and we're going to get them out." He was so confident.
Horrible.
It
happened though. Yeah, we'll learn our lesson hopefully.
Well, we're going to probably talk about a bit more Super Bowl, playoff, AFC and NFC Championship football in just a moment's time. And make sure you check out Star Sports Betting for all your betting needs I say all your betting needs for the rest of the season, all your betting needs for the Super Bowl. I'm sure you're going to be able to bet on if it's heads or tails at the start of the game, if the Gatorade's going to be blue or green. I don't know who's going to be on the stage first, Snoop Dogg or one of the other people, or Kendrick Lamar. I don't know. We don't know what you can bet on there, but Star Sports Betting will be the place for you to go to check them out in our social media bio. A fun weekend. 2 games on the Sunday. It feels like it's been a very long season, and the closer we get to the Super Bowl, the closer we get to the end, the more we're reminded that it's going to be such a long summer but we've got such great things to look forward to in March with free agency, with these coaches that are starting to turn up at new places. It's going to be very different for agency. I think it's going to be a really exciting one and maybe a lot better one than it was last year, even though last year was also great fun. And then we go and roll on to the NFL draft, and the franchise tag is going to be here step by step for each of it. But the road to Super Bowl. We'll start off with the AFC Championship game, George. So the Bengals beating the Chiefs 27-24, went to overtime, and the Chiefs only scored 3 points in the second half. It was a firework of a game. Joe, I was about to call him Joe Bengal. He probably is going to be called Joe Bengal from
That's
now
fine.
on.
I'm sure he'll accept it.
Joe Burrow of the Bengals coming in with the bling and showing it right on the field and showing up to beat Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, a lot happened in this game. Burrow went off. Patrick Mahomes had some quality moments as well. What's your takeaway from this AFC matchup? We're probably going to see a lot in the future. Maybe not in the championship game, but these two guys might be meeting in the playoffs for a good time to come.
Absolutely. That game. So the last few weeks of the playoffs, I've stayed in the flames with the Bengals, right? Joe Burrow has done a lot for this team, as well as the people they've drafted in Chase, and they got Higgins and Boyd, and I forget the name of the O-lineman, but he completes a triple threat of the LSU guys, Burrow, Chase, and I forget his name, but the O-lineman. That game in particular, or even if we go back to the first game, I think it was week 17 or week 18 where Kansas lost to the Bengals. At halftime in that game, I believe they were down, I don't know how many points, it might have been 11 points or more. They were down by a certain number of points. Fast forward to the game we've just seen this weekend, the Bengals were down by the same number of points. At that point, I think, Andy Reid's probably thinking, all right, this is danger territory, because although we're up by however many points, this happened last time and the result didn't go our way. Now, I'm guessing like you guys, after seeing the Kansas City go up 21-3, you're probably thinking this is a blowout. And I thought the same thing. I was like, yeah, I guess the Bengals aren't going to do it. Kind of, this is Brady's territory. He's the only guy that can come back and win those kind of games, not Burrow. He's never been there before. He's only 2 years out of college. A few things that changed the game for me. One being the Samaje Perine screen touchdown, which gave them a little bit of life. Going to halftime, they come out and the Chiefs can't move the ball. Now, the defensive coordinator for the Bengals, again, I forget his name, but what a move by him to switch their scheme to rush 3 and drop 8. They had no answer. It was so weird. And they also had a spy. Most of the times it was Hubbard on Mahomes. I've never seen Mahomes. I mean, they didn't have a great start to the season anyway, the Chiefs, but I've never seen him look so uncomfortable. And I know he did complete some scramble passes, but when Mahomes scrambles, good things normally happens. Except this time, he was just being sacked, sack after sack after sack. At one point, they had punt, interception, punt, something like that. It's just unreal. I mean, they had no answer for him. Joe Burrow, who tore his ACL last season and clearly, didn't have a great time, has come back and is breaking tackles by the likes guys of Chris Jones, who were within 4 yards of sacking him on multiple occasions, and they couldn't stop him. What I was seeing was just mind blowing. I wasn't expecting it. I did pick the Bengals to win. I didn't think they were going to win, but so many things changed the course of the game. Their run game wasn't great at the start, but Mixon definitely showed up towards the end. The interception where Mahomes, I think he tried to throw a little dink and dunk pass and it was intercepted. Obviously, that changed the swing of things as well. Kansas were stopped at the 1 yard line, back to back to back. You couldn't make it up. You couldn't make it up. But me, overall, I loved everything I saw. I won't give you my pick for the Super Bowl just yet. We'll come to that later. But I have no doubt. I mean, if I had to adopt another team, it would probably be the Bengals. You can't hate them. You cannot hate them. I mean, Mahomes is great, but man, the Bengals, they showed up. They got their claws out, to use of a better term, and they showed everybody what they're capable of doing.
Your quote then of, oh, well, I wanted the Bengals to win, but I thought the Chiefs were going to win, is pretty much the story of about 10 of the WhatsApp messages that were in our fantasy football group in and amongst our friends when we were score predicting before the game even began. You're right. I mean, but Burrow, that wriggle out that he did with Chris Jones, it was just a magical moment. And Andrew, you are obviously our main college guy here as well. You've been watched Joe Burrow at his time at LSU and followed his career whilst he was at college. And you've always been a believer in him, haven't you, Andy? Like ever since he got drafted that number one pick, there was some doubts about him going overall number one. Was it his season just one hit wonder? Yes, that season for LSU was historical. But you said from day one, this guy's got it. And if you're gonna have to turn your franchise around with a new quarterback, Joe Burrow is the guy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Ohio State fan, and he was there. And when he went to LSU, the season that he had, I was like, do I support LSU now? Because he was just that good. Every week, I just wanted to watch LSU. They were that good. I was banging on about him to Fred. I even went back today and listened on the way to work on the drive over what I actually said to him about him when we did the pre-draft shows and things like that. So yeah, I was just so excited about him. Said he could be the person to turn this franchise around. Didn't think it'd be as quick as what it was, but it's just the guy doesn't know how to lose. He moved to LSU and then he went on an unbeaten season. He beat Alabama, beat Clemson, beat everyone, and then he's come into the NFL, didn't have a full first season. And then look what he does with a proper full season. He just finds ways to win games. He is the face of the franchise. It's what we've all been talking about. And that's why he was the number one pick. Is just such an amazing talent. And you can just buy into it. The fact that we spoke about it last week, didn't we? That there's veterans from other teams coming to the Bengals, and when they were being interviewed after the games, they're like, what made you come to the Bengals? It was like, Joe, we wanted to play with Joe. And that's just massive for a second-year player to have that already in the NFL, that veterans want to come and play for you. I mean, AJ Green must be kicking himself.
Oh my God, yeah. Like off the back of what you're saying, Andrew, like Hendrickson, who has been under the radar, I think he has like 16, 17 sacks this season, who I believe came from the Saints, has turned around that defense. But guys like Hubbard as well, who isn't a young spring chicken, that he has been playing for a while too. Just so many different factors. And I mean, generally, they have a young team. I mean, guys like Hilton and on the defensive side who are, balling out of their minds. But if we flip it and look at Kansas for a little bit, the first half, they looked like the Kansas City. They looked unstoppable, right? Mahomes is, going side action pass and he's doing all the magic tricks and he just looks like he's back. But it just seems as if, they get to the point where they were running the ball with McKinnon, another guy who I think is under the radar. And every run, they were getting about 5 to 7 yards, first down, 1st and 2, putting their offenses in good positions, whereas Kansas pretty much could get anything going. Mixon wasn't getting anything going, and they were stuck in situations like 2nd and 9, 2nd and 8, which doesn't give you much choice in terms of moving down the field because you have to throw the ball. But the way that they were able to just completely switch, and you would think, right, the Kansas City, I can't remember his name, Eric. You'd think he would come out, and that's the one, the enemy. You'd think he'd come out and be able to come up with a scheme to. I think it's 45% of the time that the Bengals rushed 3 and dropped 8, and there was just no answer. There was none. Even guys like Tyreek Hill can get open, Kelsey can get open, Pringle, none of them. And you just thought to yourself, okay, let's see what they're going to do. They've got to switch something up. They went 21 points unanswered. 21 points. This is not ex-Super Bowl champs, but Super Bowl champs from 2 years ago. They're still a great squad. Okay, they started the season poorly. They picked up form at the right time, and all of a sudden, I mean, there's one particular stat that I'll give you, which says a lot to me. There are only 2 quarterbacks that have won both the college championship and the Super Bowl. Was it in their first season? College championship and the Super Bowl. And their names are Joe Namath and Joe Montana, which kind of tells you which way I think this is going to go. So, yeah, there's your stat.
Yeah, I think the adjustment that the Bengals were able to make in that second half, and I completely agree with you, George, about the people bringing people like Hendrickson in, Hilton. We have said on this podcast for the last few weeks, we've really admired the sort of team building aspect they had over the offseason, bringing in some of these veteran and young guys, like you said, because they have got some young guys. And I think it also takes an element of luck, and it takes an element of them guys stepping up. We said the defense, they seem to have looked really good in every area, and they've not got loads of names. I know Von Bell and Jesse Bates are fantastic safeties. Yep. Mike Hilton, Eli Apple, who was no great shakes in New York, has come over and is doing pretty well. I mean, Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt, their middle linebackers are both not big names, but they seem to be stepping up week on week, and they've really turned what was a team, but what won. Was it 4 games last year and 2 games the year before? Zach Taylor was on the hot seat.
Yeah,
and now
I remember they came to London, didn't they? And I went to one of the I went to the media days and I got to speak to Zach Taylor, and it was just clear. It was clear and obvious they were going to lose the game, because that's what the Bengals did. They lost all their games. But they do this with their O-line that they have, and their O-line isn't great. I mean, the Titans game is a prime example. How do you get sacked 9 times? This is the same quarterback who isn't too far removed from an ACL tear, and you're allowing him to be sacked 9 times. I credit you still win. But the fact that they're now in the Super Bowl with this same O-line, I mean, it speaks volumes. They're not great, but they find a way to win.
It's just a special generational talent, which there is another player on the other side of the ball who is that as well, and that is in Patrick Mahomes. It's really interesting, George. Straight away, you were saying, at the start of the season, they were not good. And I find in NFL, especially NFL groups and circles, there is a lot of recency bias. And we always forget about what happened at the start of the season and what happened in the middle. And I remember all 3 of us being on this podcast, Adam when he was with us, saying that the Chiefs don't get to the playoffs looking like this. They're not going to do it. They are really not coming out like the Chiefs that we know. And slowly they have started doing that. However, I made a point at that start of the season that Mahomes was pulling out these. He has a huge bag of tricks, but the tricks all have to be brought out every single game. And that sometimes what I want from Patrick Mahomes is just be a strong, stable quarterback. You don't need to do all these crazy, insane tricks. Yes, we love him for it, but there's got to be a point where you need to just play the position very well and and have stability of it. Do you think that is maybe a bit of a problem with this Kansas City offense specifically? It is a lot of tricks. It is a lot of Travis Kelce. It is a lot of over the top to Hill. They've made Byron Pringle and McCall Hardman look really good like in the latter half of this season. But do you think sometimes when that bag of tricks starts to run a little bit thin, it's sort of like this sort of struggle of ideas? If one thing isn't working, they're not very good at sort of getting their hand in the dirt, really, and being able to flip it. What do you reckon is the problem with this Chiefs team?
I would agree, yeah. I mean, it seemed as if some teams figured it out this season. In the fact that they weren't winning games. I think they were bottom of their division at one point. You're right. I mean, everybody knows what Tyreek Hill's capable of doing. He's obviously the cheater, and he takes the top off defenses. And you'd never go man on man because you're never going to win. Travis Kelce is kind of a do-it-all guy. And then you start to look at the names, but there's a bit of a drop-off. And if you can contain those two, their run game hasn't always been great. And to be honest, it's not great, really. You saw how much Mahomes had to run in the game on the weekend, but it's not something I think you can. I mean, people are talking about whether Kansas, because Mahomes is obviously Mahomes, whether he'll be the one to catch Brady. I don't think so, because that type of offense isn't sustainable. You just saw for a whole half the Bengals just absolutely dominate the Chiefs, and they had no answer purely by dropping 8 and rushing 3 and a spy and managed to sack him a few times. You can't just rely on the speed to down the field and a dink and dunk to Kelsey and every now and again to Pringle and some of the other receivers. It doesn't work like that. And that isn't how and they'll go back and they'll realize that. So that combination of trick plays, and do you know what? I never actually realized it until you said that. It is quite true that you never really see him just do the typical standard quarterback play. It's always something flashy, which is great to see. It's entertainment. It's the NFL. They want to make money, but you can't rely on that all the time. You really can't. And they've been found out a few times this season. And I'm even scratching my head in terms of what it is they need to change, because that just won't get, yes, it got you this far, but it won't get you all the way again. I mean, it won't, because teams have figured it out. We've seen it now. We've seen the blueprint this season. Come next season, that same bag of tricks, those plays, those schemes, they just won't work. So, let's talk about Andy Reid potentially retiring. I don't know if that's the case. If it is, then there's going to be a whole lot of change in Kansas, but something does need to change. And that I don't have the answer necessarily. Probably a better run game would be great too. But yeah, that it's not sustainable by any means.
Andy, you've been invited into the board meeting with the owners of Kansas City, the Andy Reid, the GM. What are you reflecting on, and what are you thinking they're going to need to improve to compete again next year? Because let's be honest, they're in the conversation of AFC Championship every year, but there is that improvement that they need. What would you be putting in the mix there if you?
They need to keep hold of Andy Reid. In my view, I think what we forget is, because Patrick Mahomes has been so good since he came in, that we forget that he is still young, and we forget that he wasn't a first round pick, and he had red flags on his name before coming into the draft, and those sort of red flags that teams were bringing up, we're seeing in the games. That decision at the end of the first half was the biggest decision to go for it on fourth down, not kick a field goal. And I think coming out at half time and saying that was on Mahomes, that's what he wanted to do, he changed the play up, he didn't have a shot at the end zone. I think they should have kept that quiet, kept it under wraps, and just said, look, we went for it, guys, it didn't pay off. But that they've actually put it on Mahomes' shoulders at half time. They actually came out and said that. And we never saw the same guy afterwards, and he started making bad decisions and things like that. And it's all stuff we saw from him at college. When things didn't go right or he made a wrong decision, he got from bad to worse. He tried to make the game-winning plays all the time, and you saw mistakes. So I think you need Andy Reid there to keep him under wraps, and still, he's still got a ceiling. He's still pushing. I think there's still more you can get out of him, and you need someone like Andy Reid there to keep him under wraps and keep him sort of like, I'm the head coach, I call the plays, this is my team still. Although Mahomes is a lot of it, I think you still need to remember he's young, and he had red flags before, and you just need to coach them and coach them right. There's no harm in getting some more wide receivers. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire, we haven't seen the best of him yet. What he did at LSU was fantastic, and he just hasn't managed to stay fit enough to stamp his position in there. So, I think they can continue on the path they are, and just try and home in on polishing him off to be the dynasty that they could be for many years with Mahomes. So keeping hold of Reid for me is a massive, massive thing. And going out there and maybe getting a big, tall, wide receiver to complement Hill. For me, I always say that I like a big guy. I think the little guys have got their sort of, they're great once you've got the ball in their hands, and they're great downfield. But having someone that can just chuck the ball up in the air and know they can jump and catch it, I think that needs to be complemented. Yeah, they get that with Kelsey, but you need someone on the wide out, flying down there, getting that, like you see from DK Metcalf and things like that. So I think someone who fits that bill would complement them, and we'll see them in the Super Bowl again.
Yeah, I don't think they're never not going to be in the conversation with the AFC Championship and the trajectory they are going. But as for being a Steelers fan, Cincinnati Bengals, I couldn't be more disgusted to see you get into the Super Bowl. But as an NFL podcaster and fan of the NFL in general, it's so great to see this franchise get to the Super Bowl. They really do deserve it. They've really, really been gritty. This is what I like about this Bengals team is I feel like they're gritty. They've got they get their hands stuck in the mud, and their players step up, and their players have this attitude and swagger about them, which there's a lot of players I have, but I feel like this is a team mentality thing. And the way Jamar Chase has bounced back after the criticism he got in the preseason has been inspirational, really. He's going to be the offensive rookie of the year. That's without a shadow of a doubt. But let's move on to the NFC Championship, a divisional rivalry game of the LA Rams and the San Francisco 49ers. Rams winning 20-17. A blue-blooded, full-blooded, spirited game, I thought this was. It was hard hitting. Every tackle by every team was big impact hits. That must have been an absolute slugfest for both these teams, and there must be a lot of bruises. And hopefully the Rams will go into the Super Bowl with having a week off, feeling a bit more fit, because if they had to play next Sunday, I'd be a little bit worried, because these guys went at each other. This was a tradition. What I loved about these two games was they were both close games, but what's so contrasting is you had the fireworks show and the highlights of Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes making incredible plays, and then you had what would be seen as this traditionalistic NFL hard-hitting divisional rivalry game. And I mean, it was brilliant. But you got the Cooper Kupps of the world in there as well, the fantastic receivers, the fantastic play like that. But there was some big hits. When you have players like Aaron Donald, Fred Warner on the other side of the ball, who could just get around so quick. It was really great. George, I mean, it went to the wire. A very strange interception on the last play to win. Really, it was one that Garoppolo, I'm sure, would have loved to have back in his hand. And it's a shame Adam's not here, because he is a massive fan of Jimmy Garoppolo. I say very sarcastically. He is not his biggest fan. But Stafford, 31-45, 337, 2 touchdowns and interception. This Rams team, I mean, I feel like they're almost weirdly underrated. I don't think people maybe give them the appreciation that they truly deserve sometimes.
So for me, I think the difference is Cam Akers. I know he had those 2 fumbles in the previous game, but Cam Akers makes this team go, because if you look at Sonny Michel and Darrell Henderson, they're very one-dimensional. Yes, they're great, but Cam Akers can do it all. You can send them out in a screen, in a wheel route. He can do quite a lot, and that allows the play action to. And Stafford is great at play action. So this game in particular, I believe, obviously they were 0-6. Sean McVay hadn't won. Kyle Shanahan had the upper hand, essentially, 0-6 against the Rams, I believe. And Jimmy Garoppolo, anyway, was 0-6 against the Rams teams. Bearing in mind, Sean McVay actually worked under Kyle Shanahan in previous years, so, it's a bit of a mind game going on. If I'm not correct, there wasn't any points scored in the first quarter until I think the late of the first quarter or early second. Clearly, these teams are still trying to figure each other out. Now, we had a guy, one of my friends, Oliver from Talk Sport, was there, and he was letting us know about how the crowd was 50-50, because obviously there was a lot of talk about the Rams trying to deny tickets to people outside of the area and all that kind of talk. But it was pretty much evenly split. Now, for me, whenever the game comes down to Jimmy Garoppolo, it's never really a good thing. Thumb injury aside, he's not a great passer of the ball. I mean, historically, that's not what he does. And I know they scored with George Kittle, which is a great pass, and Deebo Samuel does what Deebo Samuel does. But for me, I'd pick the Rams. I thought they had too many weapons. I mean, you pick your poison: Cooper Kupp, Odell Beckham, and then you've got Cam Akers in the backfield. And then if you flip to the defense, you've got guys like Leonard Floyd, Gaines, Aaron Donald, obviously, Von Miller, Jalen Ramsey. There's a lot of star names, if you like, on that side of the ball. But essentially, this game, I mean, people like Odell Beckham deserve a lot of credit, as does his dad for getting him out of the Cleveland Browns. So many people had written him off, said he was washed, and there he goes, putting up over 100 yards, likewise Cooper Kupp. But, like you mentioned it, the way the game ended, for one, with Garoppolo doing a Wentz-like play. I hate to say it, because Wentz is my quarterback currently, trying to make something happen, and it ends up being intercepted. But another thing I think people are forgetting is kickers still matter, because Evan McPherson for the Bengals has carried them on his back at the end of both of those games. And likewise, is it Mike Gay? I think it's Matt Gay for the Rams that's done the same. I mean, it was a closer game than I thought it was going to be, because I didn't think the 49ers would have the firepower. But like you said, it was a hard-hitting, traditional sort of game, back and forth blows, low scoring at the start. And McVay and the Rams finally broke that curse to not go 0-7 against the 49ers. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm glad the 49ers didn't win, because I feel like 49ers in the Super Bowl would be quite predictable. They are a predictable team. You know, they have talent like Deebo Samuel, but you know what's coming, you know what's expected. So if they did make the Super Bowl, it would just be a case of running the ball, which is kind of boring from an entertainment perspective. But yeah, I mean, the Rams, they got it done. They're the second team back-to-back to host Super Bowl in their home stadium. The Bucs did it last season, and now the Rams are doing it this season at SoFi Stadium. But believe it or not, they're actually listed as the away team, even though they're in their home stadium. So yeah, it's going to be a great game, without a doubt. I think the Rams deserve it. Matt Stafford is a great quarterback. I think the Lions have, they kept him there for so long, and he didn't really have anyone to work with such a Megatron. And I think now that they've gone all in, they don't have any first-round picks till 2024, I believe. So they kind of had to win. They had to win, and they managed to put it out of the bag, and I am happy for them. So we should see a great Super Bowl, without a doubt.
Sorry, apologies. My Wi-Fi is a little bit funny my end,
That's
but
fine.
I'm sure we'll carry on. Unfortunately, listeners and watchers, I am in a hotel room in the middle of nowhere in Essex due to a new job. So congratulations to me, but it is a very different setup. It'll be all back to normal next week. Yeah, you're right. Stafford being in Detroit for all that time, Andrew. I mean, everyone knew his talent. Everyone knew his talent and knew how good he was. He was breaking records and setting records in Detroit with that team for that long. And like George alluded to, with really Calvin Johnson, that was about it for his time there. He gets traded pretty much about, I think it was about 4 weeks from now last year that he got traded for all them first round picks, and Jared Goff obviously going over to Detroit. How happy are you, Andrew, for Stafford to be able to really, be in this game for so long? Never really having the aspiration to get into the Super Bowl, but probably knowing Detroit are never going to get to the Super Bowl. And then his career really has changed in a year, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the two quarterbacks that I most wanted to get to the Super Bowl as well. Obviously, we've had many a conversation about Matthew Stafford, and I've spent hours defending him when you thought he was done and washed up and you should retire. And I used to send you stats on stats of how good he was. We've lost Fred for a little bit, but
we have.
Yeah, so I had loads of conversations with Fred that I used to send him stats on stats on stats of how good Matthew Stafford was every single season. I'd be like, no, he's underrated. He's so good. He deserves it. And for me, this is just the icing on the cake for him to finally go to a team and showcase how good he actually is, and prove that it was just Detroit that was the issue. I'm so that him, OBJ as well. Really happy that he's gone over there, made an impact, and managed to sort of get to a Super Bowl as well with that team. It's just a lot for. Me and Adam have spoke a lot over the season that he thinks the Rams are buying the league, and he didn't like that. And I've always been on the side of, I think that being aggressive and going after these players and going after veterans isn't always a bad thing. Bringing in these veterans on 1-year contracts. So yeah, the team that they've built, the trades that they've done, I just think it's fantastic, and it's just a different way to look at the game. So you have got the two different styles of team. You've got the Bengals, who have drafted young players and invested in a lot of young talent, against a team that's gone out and got veterans and traded and got rid of all the picks. It's just so interesting. So real happy for Stafford as well.
So here's a question for the both of you: if the Rams don't win, is someone getting fired? Bearing in mind, they've cashed in all their first round picks, and they do this historically. I mean, they don't. Again, I think I mentioned they don't have a first round pick until I believe it's 2024. They've obviously gone and drafted these guys and traded for these guys, and Von Miller, Ramsey from some years ago. They obviously got OBJ, and it's worked out so far. They're in the Super Bowl. Great, amazing. Stafford is at the helm, and he's doing a great job. If they don't win the Super Bowl, is it a failed season?
Well, for me, I don't think it's a failed season to lose in the Super Bowl. I think getting to the Super Bowl is, ideally you want to win it, and that's what you're aiming to do. But to get there is the goal, isn't it? Really, I don't think it's a necessarily failed season. I wouldn't sack anyone either. I don't think this is, if they don't win it this year, they will continue to do the process that they've been doing. I think we forget that in previous years to get to where they are now, they let go Brockers, they let go Johnson, they let go Eberkamp, they let go Todd Gurley. They move players out, and they just somehow managed, the back office managed to go, what player is a veteran and you got to remember, draft picks, not all of them are hits.
That's right.
Probably a good percentage of them aren't. You're looking for one in 8 maybe of actually being a superstar or making an impact. Whereas veteran players that maybe just lost in the franchise that they're in, or need a different scenery or a different bit of coaching, they're proven, they're good, and they just find these players. So I think they'll just do the process again and come back and try it again. And we'll be talking again, going, oh, they've made these deals. Is it their one chance again? And I think they'll continue to do that, because that's how they're aggressive, and that's what they do. So I think getting to the Super Bowl was what they had to do, and they've achieved that.
I think that when you go and trade for someone like Stafford, you definitely put yourself in the. Sorry, it's my Wi-Fi being rubbish. When you get firmly put in the driving seat, when you have someone like Stafford, if it's a quarterback for you, but the problem is it is such a small window, and Rams seem to now build this sort of rental system almost of renting these veteran style players for maybe a short amount of time, or maybe for young when he joined there. Von Miller's not very young. Leonard Floyd's not that young. But if they just maintain that sort of system of, once these guys have maybe had 2 or 3 years, they can, release them, not offer them new contracts, and then, get a sort of new batch of rentals in. Well, that could cover Stafford and a couple of these good players, and also with making these incredible deals, and also having these players like Cooper Kupp, who was not a high draft pick, and then being able to deliver the goods for them because of how how they've been enhanced by this quality coaching. I can imagine living in LA is not a bad lifestyle either, so it's attractive for any player, and their prerogative probably to play well for the Rams, because they get probably a very nice lifestyle out there in California as well.
Yeah.
So they've got a system that works for them. Like Andrew said, I think no one will say it, but getting to the Super Bowl is enough for a lot of for every franchise, especially the Rams, who were there, were in touching distance only a couple of years ago, and then have not really been in touching distance ever since. If anything, they've declined before they've now got back on this run. Hopefully, that doesn't happen again, and we don't have this happen this year where the Rams go all the way there, and then maybe there's a little decline for a couple of years. Hopefully they can sort of maintain it, but that's going to be hard to do, because they are, like you said, George, they have put themselves in a position here where they don't have the draft picks. Some of them are older. They have got some good young players though, but it seems to be trying to set and test a system that seems to be working for them. The 49ers, where do they go from here? Like I said, Adam, who usually joins, is not the big Jimmy Garoppolo fan, George. But you can't argue with their defense. It is a really, really great defense. It's so formidable. It's so athletic, and it's got some young quality guys on there as well. The question has been Jimmy Garoppolo for a long time. Obviously, they went and traded to get up and to go and get Trey Lance. Jimmy G's days are surely over now in San Francisco, and Trey Lance is going to be the guy moving them forward.
It's a weird one. You mentioned it. They drafted up to trade to draft Lance, and what we've seen, we haven't seen much of Lance, but what we have seen wasn't necessarily great. But the fact that they traded up to get him says a lot. Now, my issue is, or my point is, if Garoppolo had beat the Rams, Andrew had beat the Rams and had made it into the Super Bowl, I reckon the 49ers then have an issue on their hands, because are they really then going to trade your Super and won the Super Bowl, let's say, trade your quarterback who's got you to the Super Bowl amongst all the rumors, all the stress, all the drama throughout the season? Is Trey Lance going to take over now? Is he not? And then all of a sudden Garoppolo, I mean, he hasn't, but if he did, they'd probably have to keep him. The problem now is they do have to trade. I mean, he won't be their quarterback. We know that. It's going to be Trey Lance. And I I don't know. They have a great defense. We know that they have good weapons and Debo, and let's remember they didn't have their running back stable. They're still missing Raheem Mostert, who was injured extreme. I think first game of the season maybe. You've got guys like Elijah Mitchell, who I think is a very underrated runner, and Debo Samuel himself, who is a jack of all trades and does it all. And you got McHasty there as well, and I think you had the I forgot
Trey Sermon as well.
Trey Sermon, who I don't know what's going on with him, but he seems, I don't want to use the word bust, but I think he needs a while to acclimatize to the NFL. The 49ers, the quarterback, it's a bit of a pickle because I don't know how ready Trey Lance is, and he'll obviously get plenty of time now in the offseason, and I'm sure he'll dedicate time to refining his craft. But from what I saw of Trey Lance, in a very limited fashion, he doesn't seem like he's ready yet. Similar to Jordan Love, although I'd place him above Jordan Love. So I think they're in a bit of a pickle here because Garoppolo, he's not the greatest quarterback, but he can get it done at times when it matters. And now you switch over to someone like Trey Lance, who is a whole different kettle of fish. You know, he's a scrambler. He's got wheels. So I think they'll have a lot of work on their hands to get him up to speed. They have enough time, but for a matter of fact, Garoppolo will not be the quarterback moving forward. And where he goes next, I'm not entirely sure. Some people are saying the Colts. I'd rather not have him at the Colts, thank you very much. But where he does end up, I'm not entirely sure. There are a few options. I'm looking at Browns as one of them.
I think for Browns, it's a little bit. I think you've got a cheaper, less good Jimmy Garoppolo already. I don't think Jimmy G would be like the sort of a game changer for them over there. I could see him at Pittsburgh.
He's not an upgrade.
I could see him at the Steelers. I could see him at the Steelers just being the bridge for a little bit until someone wheels round. The guy's all right throw the ball and he's got a strong running game to help him out in Najee Harris. I could definitely see that on her. And I wouldn't be angry about that because I'm happy to have him as a bit of a bridge for the moment. Andrew, we said about you watching the college stuff. Obviously, Trey Lance wasn't a player that you probably focused on that much due to him going to a smaller school and being in this sort of a weaker division. But how impressed how sort of break down for me what you thought about when they did take him at that spot at number 3 and trading up to be able to go and get him pre-draft, and it was very obvious that they were going to go for Trey Lance. What's your opinion about him going forward with this San Francisco 49er team?
Well, we're having the same conversation that we had the last time they got to the Super Bowl of going like, we didn't win because we haven't got a Mahomes-styled quarterback. Jimmy G, although he's a face, he's very confident. He does some of the basics well, and he is a winner. You can't doubt his record proves he knows how to win. And I think he's a great leader of a franchise, but it's just the talent isn't quite there for him to go all the way. I think that's now been proven. Now he's stayed fit. And Trey Lance, for me, fits the description of what they were after in order to move to the next level of that styled quarterback that they wanted. He always had to be a development. He always had to be something that needed to put time and effort into and have someone in there in front of him because he was not ready. He had 1 year at a team that wasn't even in the top division. He was in a division below. And he didn't play through his last year because none of the lower division teams played during COVID. So it's tough to analyze what you're going to get out of him, but he's tall, he's well built, he's strong, he's an athlete. He fits the description of what they want, and that can really, really work for them. We know that Jimmy G was playing his heart out to maybe showcase himself to another team so he could have a future still playing in the NFL. But for me, they're going to need a backup plan. San Francisco is still going to need a backup plan for if Trey Lance's development isn't where they want it to be. And I don't know whether that's still Jimmy G for the time being. I don't know. But I'd struggle to see where he'd fit if he went somewhere else. I think if anybody needed a leader or sort of someone to be sort of get the team on side and just have stamp out all issues and things like the Browns have, then he's a perfect person to go to a franchise and have that ability to do that. But yeah, I really don't know what we're going to get out of Lance. I've not seen enough of him at college, and I've not seen enough of him in the NFL. I thought they'd use him more through the season. I thought at the start of the season, I said this to Adam. At the start of the season, they bring him in. They bring him in occasionally throughout the game, and he'd play a few plays. And then as the season went on, he just didn't come on at all. And he had those games where he started, but is that because they didn't want to risk him? Is that because he did pick up a little bit of an injury? I don't know. So only they'll know. It's San Francisco. They always keep all their back of house stuff completely silent. Nothing gets leaked. They're quite good at that. He could be absolutely incredible. I've seen clips of him at training. He's doing his job as a rookie. He's carrying pads. He's working hard. He's not got that ego that some people have brought in. So yeah, I really don't know what the answer is going to be there, but I think they've got a talented enough defense to carry them regardless of who the starting quarterback is. So I still think they'll be competitive regardless of who the starter is.
Yeah, it's a very exciting, bright future for the San Francisco 49ers with Trey Lance in the driver's seat if he gets there. Well, let's not mess about. Super Bowl 56, it's round the corner, 11:30 p.m. our time, 13th of February on Sunday. Book Monday off. Do it now because you'll kick yourself if you get to that week and you can't book Monday off. Book Monday off because you're going to want to see your friends around. You want to have some beers. You want to eat some good food. And it's going to be a great night watching the Cincinnati Bengals face the LA Rams. The Rams are being only the second team in history to play the Super Bowl at their home stadium. Last time it happened, the home team won, and that was last year with Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Raymond James Stadium. Now, Andrew, I'm going to let you keep silent about it all so that we have at least something to talk about in the next couple of weeks. But George, why don't you tell us who's taking the win here at Super Bowl 56? You can maybe even say who maybe your MVP is going to be. What are you thinking? Are the Bengals going to walk away with it, or the Rams going to win at SoFi?
So my pick for the Super Bowl. So kind of basically, I have stayed in the Flames. I'll come out and say that the Bengals have impressed me quite a lot towards the end of the season. I think they were like 75-1 or something crazy odds at the start of the season to win the Super Bowl, and then sort of here we are. They've gone through some adversity. They've won some great games, lost some great games. But everything that I've seen from them, and I think they're playing loose and they're playing without any pressure on their back. I can't say the same for the Rams. And the key thing for me is the Bengals are very much a second half team, whereas the Rams tend to give away a lot of their leads. Clearly, they almost gave away the game to the Bucs after they were up by, I think, 3 touchdowns. You can't afford to do that. So, for those reasons, I'll be going with the Bengals once again. Again, they're in the Rams Stadium. It's amazing SoFi Stadium, probably one of the best stadium in the NFL right now. I just think, I know the Rams have a great D-line, and they will be sacking Joe Burrow. That's a fact, because the Bengals O-line are not great. If the Titans can sack him 9 times, then the Rams will probably do even better. But I trust the Bengals defensive coordinators to sort this game plan out, because if they can at least contain Miller, Gaines, Floyd, and Donald, they have every chance in the world, because it's not just Ramsey. They have to worry about Boyd. They have to worry about CJ Uzomah if he's back. They have to worry about T. Higgins, who's also another 1,000-yard rusher, not just Jamar Chase. Then you throw in the guys like Joe Mixon, and then you talk about the king himself, Burrow. So, yeah, I'm all in on the Bengals. I mean, it's going to be a close game. I think it'll be an entertaining game as well. It won't be boring by any means. But I'm staying in the Flames with the Bengals, and who dey?
Who dey Bengals, and it might be, you never know. You've never seen a kicker get an MVP award, but
yes.
Pearson, you never know. The way he's been playing, he could be the MVP of the Super Bowl. Kickers do really matter.
My MVP would be Joe Burrow. I think it would be Joe Burrow, and I know they always give it to the quarterback, but I think he'll actually go out and earn it. So I definitely will go with Joe Burrow.
Brilliant. Well, we'll be holding you to that, George. Like I said, 13th of February, Sunday, 11:30 p.m. our time, Super Bowl 56 at SoFi Stadium. It's going to be one hell of a night. It's not going to be, so you've got a week off this week to prep for it. Like I said, book Monday off, start planning your party and everything like that for the Super Bowl night. But until then, we'll be back next week. Thank you for watching, and it'll be all over very soon. It's going to be a long summer, but it's going to be one hell of a game, Cincinnati and LA. But until then, have a great week, and we'll see you.